Have you heard of the Andromeda Paradox? So it wasn't something that I had heard of before. However, this is one of the Easter eggs that my guides dropped for me beginning last week. And so I've been in the process of putting together a series of channeled messages and a little bit of research that I've done, as well as some other messages that I've gotten from my guides around. This was one of the key components of it, but it has to do with the time distortions that we are experiencing as we're going through Ascension, especially in this particular period of Ascension that many of us in this collective are experiencing. Strange things happening, or our experience of time being different, noticing how time seems to expand or constrict at certain points, noticing how a lot of the days just seem to fly by, and then there are being other moments that are where time feels extended. Other things having to do with strange overlaps of timelines and having that experience come into this reality, the Mandela effect becoming something that we're not just seeing in external circumstances, but also seeing that in our own life in certain ways. So I'm gonna start with the first Easter egg, and this is the Andromeda Paradox. It popped up on a reel that was from an episode of Neil deGrasse Tyson's podcast, Star Talk, with Hakeem, I want to pronounce his last name correctly, Hakeem Oluseyi. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He is a cosmologist and astrophysicist, and he was talking about the Andromeda Paradox, and they were talking about time, as a matter of fact, when I went and watched at least most of that original episode. So I wanted to put a snippet of that in this video, but I'm afraid that YouTube will then take this video down because it has someone else's content in it. So I'm going to link the original podcast with the timestamp on where you can find this. He talks about the Andromeda Paradox, which is, the example he gave was if he was sitting still and viewing the Andromeda galaxy and someone else was running by him, and at the moment when they were practically in the same space, they both looked at the Andromeda galaxy, they would be viewing different versions of the galaxy. What they would see would be days apart. And so in talking about this, he was explaining that ultimately there is, because of this paradox, because when you are in motion, your perception of time is different from an observer who is stationary. And so ultimately, there is no now moment. And the reason why we seem to have a now moment is because we are so close together. But when you start talking about great distances, then you can recognize that truly there is no now moment. And he says that our belief that there is a now moment is a bias based upon how close we are, and how close we are together and how small we are. So when I saw this, it just immediately, I understood. I could see I was getting a download from my guides and could see how this connected to what we're experiencing with time. When we talk about ascension implies, with the word and the definition of it, movement. And we talk about the ascension journey and it being a path because it is movement. It is literal, well, it is figurative movement, right? But it is literal movement as well. Because as we progress along this journey, our frequency does shift, it does move. And ultimately, when we consider ourselves, although I may be sitting still, removing the fact that my hands are moving, although I may be sitting still, the atoms within me are moving, my frequency is changing, my energetic field there's movement within that. There's movement within everything. The illusion of what we see as stationary is an illusion based upon our perception. So this is super fascinating. So I started doing some research because although I studied a little bit of physics in college, that was a really long time ago, and it was for a relatively short period of time. So, but in doing a little bit of research on the Andromeda Paradox, then another thing that was brought to the forefront of my attention was I kept hearing redshift. And I was recognized that terminology having to do with measuring when we basically look at stars at a distance and measuring the light, or measuring the distance to that star. And so let me give you the actual definition instead of talking around it. The redshift is an increase in the wavelength of light over distance. And so it is a movement towards the electromagnetic spectrum, because the light waves increase in width, I guess I want to say. They lengthen. So what's interesting is, another thing that's interesting, all of this is interesting, but another thing that's interesting is that there are a couple of there's one main accepted theory around why this occurs, but scientists really don't know for sure why this occurs. The main theory states that this is due to the Big Bang and the expansion of the universe. And so as light travels a distance, then the wavelengths become stretched in effect because of the expansion of the universe. The other theory posits that it's called the tired light theory, and it proposes that photons lose energy as they travel across distance, thereby causing the red shift, causing the increase in the wavelength and then moving to the electromagnetic end of the spectrum. So really interesting. One thing I want to mention here is, as you look at a light spectrum, I also found it very, very, very interesting that it moves. It's called the redshift because it's moving towards the redder end of the spectrum. If you look at the color frequencies associated with the full spectrum of light, right? Well, on the opposite end is like indigo and purple. And when I was looking at it earlier today, it occurred to me, I recognized that we're also looking at the colors of the chakras as we're looking at this light spectrum. And I found it really super interesting that this shift moves us towards like the root chakra color. And as frequency, and that's would be a lower frequency, as the frequency increases or the wavelength shortens, it moves us towards purple, or indigo, purple, violet, and towards the crown chakra color. So I found that's a little bit of a side note, but certainly feels like it's applicable here too in some way. So maybe we'll investigate that a little bit further another time. So getting back to the redshift I found to be really interesting because, and I'll get into a message here that I received. So this first download with the Andromeda Paradox came on May the 6th. 2 days later, I received a channeled message from my Polarian guide and an Andromedan guide that goes into this a little bit more. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to say about the redshift before we get to that. I don't think so. But we can see how, well, let me read this for you and then I'll talk about this a little bit more. All right, let me find the message. I have a lot of notes here. Lots and lots and lots of notes. Okay. Okay, so here is the message I received on May the 8th. As the separation between 3D and 5D increases, our perceptions of time are going to increasingly change or differ as well. Our physical bodies may be stationary, but the alterations within our cells down to our DNA are changes which are altering our core frequency, causing us to experience reality from a different now than those on a different frequency. This is reflected in the differing experiences of reality in the now, as well as, and this will begin to occur more and more frequently as the separation widens, differing recollections of time related to memories of past events, the sequence of events, as well as potentially events themselves. This shift is analogous to the redshift of light physics describes in relation to cosmic bodies and the light you see the farther away these bodies are from Earth. So another interesting thing that happened on May the 6th for me, I'm going to be kind of vague because this is kind of personal, but I want to share the overall idea of it with you because it is so applicable here. It was certainly not, there's no coincidence, but it was fascinating that these were happening back to back. So highly correlated. I spoke with someone that remembered me from about 20 years ago. And well, actually over 20 years ago, 23 years ago. It was someone I had a hard time remembering her, but remembered the circumstances that caused us to interact, right? And the situations and the environment that caused us to interact. What was really interesting though, was that she was recounting some things that she remembered about me. However, the timeline she was giving me did not match with the timeline I experienced. So she was recounting things, and I'm not saying she was wrong by any means. And herein lies the point. The point is that we are going to start to experience more and more, and not just mandala effects out in the external world, but in our personal lives too. Effect of where a timeline has split. We've traveled down one timeline, another person has traveled down another timeline, and it's to the point that those timelines don't overlap the way they did back maybe when we did interact with that person, or because my timeline has diverged a certain way, then it's taken me off of the timeline where she was. This is so trippy and so difficult to describe. They don't overlap the same way they would had I stayed on a timeline that was aligned with her timeline. Does that make sense? I hope you guys are understanding what I'm saying here. It was so bizarre. So bizarre. So this definitely speaks to that, and it's coming. I'm sharing this because I want you guys to be aware that you're going to start to experience this as well. And it's not for us to, I knew during the conversation that part of me really wanted to correct her, that it's not possible that your dates are wrong, but the dates couldn't be wrong based on when she was in certain locations, so her memory is her memory, and it's correct for her, and my memory is my memory, and it's correct for me. It's not for us to judge or try to correct people because they're not matching up. It's to recognize that this is another sign of this separation between the 3D and the 5D. Okay, so I continued to connect with my guides around this topic. It was very interesting because there's a lot of really intense energy around this, and very, very profound messages. And so there were a few days where my body needed a break. And that's part of this too. And this will come up in I think, did it come up? Oh, I stopped too early. Sorry about that. Okay, so going back to the message from my Polarian and the Andromedan guide. So there was more to it. I knew there was more to it. Okay, so going back to the redshift. The redshift of Ascension is similar. Okay, so let me repeat a section here. This shift is analogous to the redshift of light physics describes in relation to cosmic bodies and the light you see the further away these bodies are from Earth. The redshift of Ascension is similar. The time dilations and drifts, the seemingly increased rate at which you experience your reality, and the fluctuations of time within your days. This is an effect of Ascension, yes, and it is a primary cause for our strong reminders towards caring for your physicality. It is a reflection of, sorry, I'm trying to not drop this journal. It is a reflection and result of the alterations occurring within you as you move through the process of ascension. We speak of these movements as if it is allegory or a metaphor. You often speak of the spiritual growth in terms of physical movement, as in a path or a journey, as we talked about. This is purposeful as it refers to a deeper type of movement, the movement and shifts of the frequency your cells are emitting, the movement which occurs through the excitation of photons within these cells. Your physicality is an assemblage of billions and billions of atoms and subatomic particles all moving and dancing together. And I looked up the number of how many atoms are in the body, in the human body, and it's 7 times 10 to the 27th power. That's like a billion. It's 10 with 27 zeros behind it. That how 7 times that. It's a lot of atoms. Okay, so then this morning I sat down again to speak with my guides about this and get a little bit more information. I could feel that there was more to this that needed to come through to help with the understanding of it, because it is important for us to acknowledge these experiences and to not judge ourselves, not to think that we're, that there's something wrong with us, but to recognize that not only is there a reason for it, but we are all having this experience, and you're not alone in feeling this. And understanding the process of it is going to help us to be able to navigate it, but also to recognize the purpose and the value in it, as you're going to hear in this next section, which is really super interesting. So as I sat down with my guys this morning, Merlin stepped forward. And he is one of my main guides, and I was happily surprised that he came forward to explain this. So I'm going to read the channeled message from Merlin around these the Andromeda Paradox and how this connects to what we're experiencing with Ascension. So Merlin said, "What you are witnessing now is the illusion within the human definition of time. The layers of it being revealed as your ascension path leads you to embody different states of frequency and coherence than were available to you when the matrix of these illusions within the 3D were still so heavily ingrained within your awareness, impacting the degree to which your consciousness could speak to your now self. The unusual experiences of time, the distortions, the changes in the feel of its speed of passing, the mandala effects you are witnessing within your day-to-day lives, all are related to the ascension path. These will continue to evolve, and new experiences will arrive because of this evolution. It is a direct outcome of the individual and collective shifts in consciousness the resulting shifts in frequency embodiment which precipitate these experiences into your now awareness. As the sense of time becomes more and more unusual, more mutable in its flow and even direction, allow yourselves to be open to how it moves. Allow yourselves to be perceptive to elements of the now self-experience which repeat, connecting this patterning to how the flow of time bends and curls upon itself. So to take a sidebar here, to make sure that, when this goes back to what we talked about awareness, making sure that we're remaining aware of noticing these patterns, the patterns of the changes, the patterns in the expansion of time, the sensation of time, the expansion of the sensation of it either constricting or flowing, bending and weaving in some cases, overlapping, and even changing direction. Okay, back to the message. There is awareness of the altering in your perception of time as Ascension has progressed, and particularly with recent escalations among many within the collective. Much has been said and written about this massive uprising in the collective awareness and consciousness, the frequency shifts, the physical changes to your cellular structures, and the resulting activation of dormant aspects of your DNA. As you are holding and emitting more light, your range of sensitivity to the entirety of the light spectrum, to the spectrum of energy emission and energy reception, has amplified as well. The human physicality is beginning to alter its own perception of time through the shifts of Ascension. Your physicality is linked to your consciousness in this form. Yes, you travel with your consciousness through many dimensions, quantum fields, and even other physical locations through astral travel. However, to be within this collective I speak to, you are human and therefore have this human physicality which holds the consciousness. It is the vessel which allows you to experience the fullness of this human life, to sense in a way which is unique to the human. It is this physicality and the Ascension changes which are altering the illusion of time itself. Time, in the way you currently understand it, is a human-defined concept. Other species of this universe also have a concept of time, yet the definition is variable as it is based upon their experience within their physicality. What you are experiencing now is the changing physical perception by the human. Okay. This is where your earlier message of the redshift ties into this message. In your human understanding of physics, the redshift is an indicator of distance of a viewed object emitting light, correct? And I affirmed yes. And Merlin said, it is similar to the shift in experiences within your collective. The variances within the recollection, is that it? Yes, the variances within the recollection of events past, as well as the variances among individuals' experiences of the now time. The human language does not have words yet suitable to encompass the full expression of this process. So understand this transmission is in a way limited by vocabulary. We ask listeners to open to the frequency of the transmission beyond the words. More understanding occurs there. The variances are a direct result of the light emission variance between the observer and the observed. This is merely a quantification for the purpose of understanding the variance. Not a judgment upon either. All are valuable and purposeful. Those whose physicalities are evolving to hold and emit greater intensity and volume of light, increasing density of photons, are altering their own perception of time through this emission It is the individual as well as the collective which is causing the unusual experiences of time. Just as was described in the Andromeda Paradox, your movement through space alters your experience of time, as does your photonic intensity. The human has measured time by the light reflecting back to them. However, this was based upon a static emission of photons from the human. Now, as you evolve to emit greater density of photons, the intensity of your light increases and affects the perception of your human senses. You are altering the space-time around you with your presence. It is a quantum evolution, the observer and the observed evolving together as they are linked through the act of observation. There cannot be an effect upon one without the other reflecting a corresponding effect. In this way, you also see how your perception of the observed is incurring increasing effect upon your own experience of the observed. As the intensity of your light emission grows, so too does the corresponding reflection back from the observer. That's the end of that message. So, just fascinating. I find it completely fascinating. And so what a beautiful, then kind of bringing it full circle to how our individual ascension is having, I mean, we have known the great impact it has, but to have impact on our perception to the point of perceiving time differently is just phenomenal. I mean, what an amazing time to be alive, right? And what an important reminder too for all of us on this path, that our value lies in our presence. And by continuing on this path and allowing ourselves to expand and grow and go through this transformation and this evolution and moving towards Homo Luminous, we are emitting, expressing is what I wanted to say, emitting more photons, more light, and the effect that that has on the collective. And how interesting that it is this emission that is actually creating a difference in our perception. And it goes back to the motion influencing our perception of time, right? Because we are, not only are we having more light reflected back to us because we are emitting more light, but the motion as a result of our ascension and our frequency shifts and our expansion, it has such a great impact. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. I don't usually ask this, but this is a really, really profound message, and I think one that could be really helpful for so many people in talking about how and explaining and understanding why we are experiencing some of these things. So if this resonated for you, please feel free. Please do share it, like it, comment, but please do share it as widely as you can so this gets to as many people as possible, especially those who are going through and sharing this journey with us. So thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for sharing in this journey with me. And as always, I send you so much love and gratitude, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon.